An insolent lady threw a tantrum at Mini Marg in Jammu and Kashmir. But before we speak of those tantrums, I would like to discuss what has made her passage to that place even possible. The freedoms she ranted about. What have they really cost the nation? In the second week of May 1999, a 22-year-old Lieutenant Saurav Kahlia of the 4th JAT Regiment, led 5 soldiers on a patrol above Kaksar in Kargil sector. He was the first Indian officer to report that the Pakistani army had crept across the line of control and dug into the heights on the Indian side. He and his men, Sepoys Arjun Ram, Bhavan Lal Bagaria, Bhika Ram, Mula Ram, and Naresh Singh, fought until the ammunition had ran out, and then they were taken alive. For 22 days, the enemy held them. When the bodies came back on 9th of June 1999, the post-mortem read like a crime report of the crimes committed by a bunch of psychopaths with no humanity left in them. The bodies of the Jawan and Lieutenant Saurabh Kahlia had been mutilated beyond recognition. Their eardrums had been pierced with hot rods, eyes had been punctured and gouged, teeth and bones had been broken, skulls had been fractured, cigarette burns were all across the skin, limbs and genitals had been cut off. All of this had happened while they were still alive. Only after all of that had been done to them were these impossibly brave men shot. Lieutenant Saurabh Kahlia was still 20 days short of his 23rd birthday. His mother remembers his last words to her on the phone that one day he would do something the whole world would notice. The heck the world noticed. We all simply refused for a long time to even imagine that someone in flesh and blood so young could stand for so long in the face of a demonic presence that insists of calling itself army, the so-called Pakistani army, which is nothing more than a group of war criminals. And then there was Captain Vikram Batra, the Sher Shah of the 13 J&K Rifles, 24 years old, who took .5140 and radioed the line that a generation still repeats, Ye Dil Mange More. Weeks later, while he was storming the .4875 in Kargil, he moved to pull a wounded junior officer to safety, told the man that he had a family to go home to, and he himself was martyred doing that. The Paramveer Chakra for his bravery was actually received by his father posthumously. Let's talk about Lance Naik Hemraj and Lance Naik Sudhakar Singh of 13 Rajputana Rifles. On 8th of January 2013, a Pakistani border action team crossed the LOC in the Mendhar sector and ambushed their patrol and mutilated both men. Lance Naik Hemraj was beheaded. His severed head was carried back across the line as a trophy and was never returned. His widow, for years afterwards, asked only that the head come home before any Pakistani leader was welcomed on Indian soil. Well, it never did. Let us also speak finally of the ones whose ashes have not yet cooled down. The soldiers martyred at the border every other day. The Jawans lost to Pakistani raids and sniper fire in Poonch and Rajouri. Some of them, fathers who never met the children born the very week they met martyrdom. This is not distant history. This is the standing cost, the boundary that the road at Mini Marg happens to lead to. Hold those martyrs in your mind for the rest of our discussion. I am Desh Kapoor, and this is Drishtikon TV. On 25th of July, tourists were stopped at a checkpoint in Mini Marg in the Dras belt of Ladakh's Kargil district on the Mini Marg to Zojila to Sonamarg road. The reason was very straightforward and, as it turns out, extremely critical. The defense minister and the chief of army staff were moving through that sector. Their travel had been reshuffled due to bad weather. Movement on a strategic mountain artery close to the line of control was regulated for a few hours. Quite honestly, this is the least exotic thing that can happen in that terrain, where the road is often closed very routinely for snow, for landslides, for convoys, and for operations against terrorists and Pakistani infiltrations. A young foul-mouthed woman decided the delay was an outrage against herself in particular. So she filmed a video that is now viral with her angry rants. She barked in butchered English at the personnel on duty, proclaiming, "We are Gen Z. We are not tolerate this nonsense."
बिल्कुल
सीनियर को बुलाओ ना मंत्री यहाँ से कैसे निकलेगा we are Gen Zs we are not tolerate this nonsense we are not tolerate this nonsense आप लोग मुझे बताओ आप लोग बैठोगे या नहीं बैठोगे
बैठूंगा
चलो चलो कैसे रोकेंगे 5 घंटे हो गए निकालो सब लोग गाड़ी और चलो
वो कश्मीर एयरपोर्ट पे नहीं उतरे
हम नहीं जाएंगे किसी को जाने भी नहीं देंगे हम लोग पैसे देके यहाँ घूमने आते हैं या फिर ये सब टॉलरेट करने आते हैं ताला लगा दिया इन्होंने कश्मीरियों के साथ तो करते हैं अब बाहर के टूरिस्टों के साथ भी कर रहे हैं देखो इन्होंने किसी ताला लगा दिया फिर अपना नाम भी नहीं बताया और वहाँ चले गए ये देखो यहाँ पे कोई भी जवाबदारी के लिए कोई नहीं बैठा है यहाँ पर ताला लगा
and urged other tourists to walk off in protest and drew comparisons that raised the temperature of those around, saying that the forces lock up tourists the way they lock up the Kashmiris. She reportedly sat down in a dharna at the post and by several accounts held up even an army convoy trying to reach a transit camp. Somewhere in that exchange, she even had the gall to say that the army is paid out of her taxes, so it answers to her. We will come to that later. Two facts deserve to be nailed right away before anything else. First, the checkpost was a police post, and the army has clarified that its personnel had no role in the stoppage. The uniform that she was ranting about, living on her taxes, was in that moment very likely not even the uniform that was in front of her. And second, she was not stranded on a whim of a petty power. She was held because two men most responsible for defending the Republic of India were actually on that road, the defense minister and the army chief. The delay she treated as personal insult was a physical evidence that the national security was functioning exactly as it was designed to. The response to her nonsense has been swift and bipartisan in the only way that really matters. The Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir, Omar Abdullah, observed that "We are Gen Z" has quietly become the new "Do you know who my father is? Mera baap kaun hai?" A badge of entitlement rather than of any generation's promise. Former Army Chief General V.K. Singh and other decorated veterans said plainly that a birth cohort is not a license to trample security protocol. Retired Lieutenant General K.J.S. Dhillon offered the dry mercy of wishing her a speedy recovery. Thankfully, the country for once did not need to be told what it was looking at. Absolute filth. Now, let us talk about the taxes for a moment, shall we? The argument of this insolent woman was public servants are paid from public money. Taxpayers are public. Therefore, a taxpayer may direct a public servant and resent any inconvenience the servant causes to him or her. On its face, it sounds almost bureaucratically accurate, but let us discuss the facts. First and foremost, a soldier is a taxpayer as well. Officers and jawans pay income tax on their pay like any salaried citizen. The idea that a tourist funds the army while the army merely consumes is a delusional fiction. Both stand on the same side of the tax ledger. Most critically, the soldier posted at 13, 14, or 15,000 feet on the Mini Marg axis contributes something that the tourist or other citizens never ever can: the willingness to be on the line itself. Now, let us get certain things clearly stated as plainly as I possibly can articulate it. A soldier is not a waiter. The relationship between a citizen and the armed forces is not the relationship between a customer and the service provider. You do not tip the man on the border post with your patience and expect obedience in return. He's not executing your preferences. He's executing lawful orders in defense of a boundary. And on a bad day, he's executing them with his own life. So let's know this very clearly. The checkpost is not customer service. It is the final and the ultimate edge of the nation. Taxes buy the possibility of the argument, not the right to force it upon everyone. The reason a young woman can stand on the Himalayan road and shriek about her rights on camera without fear is that the numerous Lieutenant Kalias have made that road Indian and kept it Indian. Her taxes, whatever pittance she offers, contribute to a common defense. They do not purchase a personal exemption from that defense when it becomes briefly inconvenient. The transaction she imagines, the money in exchange for command over the soldiers, has never existed in any republic anywhere in the world that has ever survived. The rant that, like they do to the Kashmiri line, is the ugliest part, and it deserves no soft treatment. Using Pakistan's propaganda of an imagined suffering that falls flat in the face of the recent facts in POJK and Jammu and Kashmir is a pathetic rhetorical ploy to win the traffic dispute. Pumping up ISI's narrative to inflate one's own inconvenience is itself a self-indictment. Very simply, it slanders the very forces who have died so that the road she was standing on exists at all. Strip the slogan away, and what remains is an old small thing wearing a new loud word, privilege, throwing a fit and calling it a rights movement. Let us also discuss the importance of abiding with the rules and the laws in the sensitive border areas. India cannot leave sensitive frontier zones to good manners. No serious country can and does. A layered legal architecture governs conduct near the defense installations and along the border and the line of control, and it scales punishment to the purpose and to the place it is done. The Official Secrets Act 1923 is the spine of the framework. Section 3 makes it an offense for any purpose prejudicial to safety or interests of the state to approach, inspect, pass over, be in the vicinity, or enter a prohibited place, or to make sketches, plans, or notes, or to obtain, record, or publish information useful to an enemy or damaging to India's sovereignty and security. Where the offense touches a work of defense, an arsenal, or a military, naval, or air force establishment, the sentence can run to 14 years. In other cases, it can reach 3. A prohibited place expressly includes defense establishments and notified military infrastructure, and much of the LOC belt near Dras and Mini Marg is exactly the kind of terrain that attracts such designation. Section 7 of the same act, the one that fits this lady's conduct best, it's an offense for any purpose in the vicinity of a prohibited place to obstruct, knowingly mislead, or observe or otherwise impede a police officer or a member of the armed forces engaged on guard, sentry, patrol, or similar duty in relation to that place. The punishment extends to 3 years or a fine or both. Sitting in dharna at a security checkpost urging others to defy it and reportedly holding up a military convoy is not a gray area at all. It is as close to textbook description of the offense as it is possible. So it should be a slam and shut case against this woman. Obstruction of a public servant, independent of the Official Secrets Act, deliberately obstructing a public servant, police, or military in the lawful discharge of duty is a distinct offense under India's general criminal law, now codified under the Bharatiya Nyaya Samhita. Blocking a lawful movement order on a strategic road is not protest, it's obstruction. And photography and the recording of designated defense sites, capturing those images of notified installations without authorization is separately restricted, precisely because a photograph taken from a public road can carry as much operational value as the footprint inside the wire. A short comparative note is also worth making because critics will call this very specific to Indian scenario. In the United States, for example, it gets worse. The same conduct sits on a graduated federal ladder. Simple unauthorized presence, just unauthorized presence on military installation is a misdemeanor under 18 U.S.C. 1382. Photographing a designated defense installation without the commanding officer's permission is a separate misdemeanor under 18 USC 795, carrying a fine that can reach six figures and needing no proof of hostile intent at all. And once the intent to injure the country enters the picture, well, the charge climbs into espionage and sabotage statutes, 18 USC 793 and 2155, where the exposure runs from 10 years to life. Interfering with federal officers, assaulting them, or carrying a weapon while doing any of this stacks up even further charges on top of all that. Every serious democracy draws this line and enforces it. The frontier is not a place where the state negotiates its rule with the loudest visitor. None of this requires treating a foolish young woman as a spy. The point is actually narrower, but more critical than that. Her conduct was not spirited. It was squarely on the wrong side of the law that has been made possible by the blood and sacrifices of the Indian soldiers. And a country that means what those statutes say would, at the minimum, register a case of trespass rather than reward it with virality. The most offensive thing about the video was the use of the pronoun we the Gen Z. She appointed herself spokesperson for an entire generation while doing the one thing that generation at its best will never do. Look at who really carries the label of Gen Z. D. Gokesh, 18 years old, became the world chess champion by outthinking Magnus Carlsen. Part of the wave that includes Pragnananda, R. Vaishali, Divya Deshmukh, they trend when they trend for what they solved, not for what they screamed out. Manu Bhaker, for example, 22 years old, walked from Paris 2024 range with 2 Olympic bronze medals and became the first athlete of independent India to win 2 medals at a single Olympic Games. Discipline under pressure in front of the world without a tantrum in sight. That's what she is. At the International Mathematical Olympiad, Indian teenagers Abel George and Arav Gupta took gold. Kanav Talwar, Sanjana Chako, Bhairav Murugan, Shreyas Shantanu adding silvers to that. No cameras were there, no slogans were there, just problems that demand a different kind of stamina most of us cannot even imagine. And then they are the ones which are building the very shield that the woman was standing behind. 21-year-old founders like Jayant Khatri, Surya Chaudhary, whose defense tech startup have already put drones in the hands of the Indian Army. Students like Sneha Deep Kumar and Mohit Kumar Nayak, assembling India's first gamma-ray CubeSat out of affordable local parts. And most directly, the young men and women of this exact generation, currently sweating through the military academies, some of whom will one day stand a lonely watch on a road very much like this one at Mini Marg. An Indian columnist actually put the whole contrast very well this month. The national camera stays fixed on the gutter while the whole generation is quietly reaching for the stars. India does not have a youth problem, you see. India has a narrative problem, a habit of mistaking the loudest voice for being the largest one. Generation Z or Gen Z in the aggregate is actually carrying equations and medals and patents and satellites and the tricolor. It does not need and should not accept a checkpost tantrum throwing insolent woman as its representative. So let the record show the correction. She speaks for herself. The generation is standing somewhere else entirely, doing the work that it needs to do. And then there is this version of the story where the lesson is simply be polite to soldiers. That version is too small. The real lesson is about the red line, the literal one, drawn across these mountains in blood of martyrs like Lieutenant Kahlia's patrol and last night Hemraj's beheading, and 1,000 quieter deaths and martyrdoms, and the more mundane civic one that is critical for the society that every mature citizen learns never to cross. The frontier is a place where the Republic keeps its promises to itself. The rules are not bureaucratic fluff. They are the accumulated memory of everything that went wrong when the rules were absent. When a soldier stops a car on the Mini Marg axis, he is not inconveniencing a tourist. He is standing exactly where better men than most of us have died securing the road against a suicide bomber. Respect for the military is not a mood to be summoned on Republic Day or Independence Day and forgotten at a checkpost. It is a discipline. It means accepting that some doors are closed for reasons above your pay grade and your patience. It means understanding that the freedom to be outraged on camera is itself a gift, purchased and repurchased by people who will never trend. Mostly by their own blood, they have purchased it. And the enforcement really matters because respect without consequence is just sentiment. A society that lets the security red line become negotiable for anyone with a phone and a swaggering sense of unearned entitlement has no sense of security. The law, the Official Secrets Act, the obstruction statutes, the restrictions on photographing sensitive sites exist to convert reverence into rule. It should be applied, not vindictively and not as a spectacle, but as plain statement that the frontier is not a stage and soldier is not staff. Lieutenant Saurav Kahlia's father spent decades asking only that his son's torture be named for what it was. The least the rest of us can do when a road closes for a few hours near the same mountains is to hold our tongue and remember why the road is still ours to complain about. The martyrs paid with their eyes and eardrums and severed heads for the boundary. The living can, at the very least, afford to pay in some patience. I'm Desh Kapoor, and this is Drishtikon. Jai Hind.